Hi, today I'm interviewing Pete Banks from our virtual academy, and we're going to be talking about their ADAS training. But before we go into that, Pete, you can tell us a little bit about your background and how do you come to be doing this type of training, and how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, so my background in the automotive industry goes quite far back. I I got into it really when I was a kid, about 12 or 13 years old, and started racing in a sort of amateur motorsport. Worked with my dad, and I shared building the car. It was a classic Mini, and raced that up until I was around, I don't know, 18, 19, 20, something like that. So that really got me into everything automotive, put me in a really good position for going into an apprenticeship, which I did at Peugeot. And then while I was at Peugeot, I absolutely loved it. And I always admired the master technicians there, looked up to them, spent a lot of time mithering them. And then, you know, was developing myself in the meantime, and doing all the technical training courses to get me up to master technician level. Worked at Volkswagen, worked at a couple of independent garages, both slightly different. One was a bit more agricultural and the other was actually a prestige specialist. So dealt with sort of Ferraris, Bentleys, Aston Martins, that kind of stuff. It was pretty cool. And then I got into training. I started teaching apprentices. And it was when I got into teaching and the training, I started to enjoy messing around with the courses, tampering with the courses. I always like to do practical things and get in the workshop and teach them how to test things, analyze things with an oscilloscope, and so that's where my course development started to come through. That then moved me on to sort of training consultancy, where we did a big project. This was for another company, and we did a big project for Porsche in China, and so I was sort of in between China and the UK for a couple of years, doing a program that was all about skills development. It wasn't about theoretical stuff in the classroom. It was about working on cars and analysing the systems, how they work. And yeah, done some cool jobs. Did some other sort of training around Europe for a while. That was quite good. Helped start the early days of our virtual academy when we were just starting out, so it was really exciting and fun. I've done all sorts of work, really focusing around sort of the newer technology, particularly in recent years, EV, and now we're just sort of moving into ADAS a little bit more, seeing a lot more demand around ADAS, and that's what I'm doing right now.
It sounds like a broad and a deep experience in automotive, and your area. It sounds a bit like mine in that I can wake up every morning and something new has happened in SEO world, or
absolutely.
It's quite the same for you.
Absolutely. It's I'm a big believer in no one knows everything. It's impossible, but you can have a good go.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Definitely have a good go. So you say you're currently working on the ADAS. How far is the ADAS course?
How far in did you say?
Yes. Is it ready to go?
Yeah, the ADAS course is pretty much ready to go. From what I know, from on my side, it's done. I sort of focus on the research. So we do a lot of really in-depth research to go well beneath the surface level of things, to do the really hard work, so that the people that come to us to learn things don't have to do that. We do that work, which is often involves, for example, with ADAS, has involved a lot of research and reading through European regulations, for example. It's thoroughly boring, but I absolutely love it. And you just eke out these small details that are really important details and key to building the story around ADAS and why we have it, how we got there. So yeah, a lot of the research is sort of looking at things like that, but also looking at the workshop side of it. But for awareness, it's kind of, it's a little bit different for me, actually. The awareness is for technical people, but it's also for non-technical people. So my normal research is around really technical subjects, whereas this is, there's technical aspects to it, but it's kind of lighter in that sense, and more so around the sort of the story of ADAS, I'd say.
So tell us a bit about the story of ADAS. And so anybody watching might not be familiar with the term, and I think like different manufacturers might use different terms for the same thing. I know I got a new car last year, and it sometimes drives me crazy. That's from a driver's perspective, and it tells me things that I don't want it to do, and it tries to pull me away from the edge, and I don't want it to pull me away from the edge. But I was thinking yesterday I had to do a drive for about a couple of hours across Glasgow, and I thought one day I might be grateful that it's doing this. If one day, I wouldn't drive tired, but you know what I mean. It might be a good idea. So tell us a bit more about what exactly ADAS is.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your sentiment exactly, because I can totally appreciate that. You know, I really love driving, and you almost love the feeling of unassisted driving. But I've also been, I'm not sure if it's fortunate or unfortunate enough to have done a serious amount of road travel. And I know when you arrive at Heathrow Airport at midnight, and you've got a 3-hour drive, there is nothing more you'd want than assisted driving. You know, there's certain instances where it's fantastic. And so there's that benefit, but really the essence of it, the origins of it, all come from safety. It's about improving safety ultimately. So ADAS stands for Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So they're all about helping the driver in many different ways. So it could be monitoring the surroundings. This could be with a camera, with a radar, and then from that information, it's gathering, collecting. It's then going to make decisions for you in some cases, and then control the vehicle in a way that could potentially save your life and other people's lives. That's really what it's all about fundamentally. Yes, there's that sort of assistance to make driving a little bit more comfortable and easy, but if you really look at it from a safety perspective, you see its benefits with say functions like braking. So there's one of the newer mandatory systems now. So this is one of the things we'll perhaps go on to later, is there are mandatory systems. It's been mandated by the EU. There's a little bit of a decision-making process going on at the moment as to whether that should apply to the UK, but I think in all honesty, vehicle manufacturers aren't going to make two different models, one with and one without, simply for the UK market. I don't think it's big enough, but I think that's ongoing, and I'm confident it is going to be adopted, and is currently adopted, because actually the date's passed since these things were made mandatory. But anyway, back to the point I was making, is one of the new ones that's mandated is the advanced emergency braking. And this is a system that will essentially perform an emergency stop for you if it suspects there is a sort of imminent collision. And you know, that's really important. You know, if you can avoid those types of collisions, you know, life-threatening incidents, that's something surely that's good. There's always unintended consequences to everything, but I think definitely the intention of it is good.
Yes, I mean, so I'm assuming, but I might be wrong. Is the data to back up that ADAS is reducing the number of collisions?
Yeah, I don't know if I can't point to any data that says ADAS is. All I can point to is, and I can't quote it because I haven't got the numbers, but I can tell you a place where you can find the numbers, and that's in our new awareness training where I talk about it. But there is a statistic about the number of accidents that occur due to human error. So ADAS is there to address that human error, and so therefore if you address the human error element, then you would believe that the number of incidents should go down in theory. So I'll just say in theory, because
Yes, yes.
You never know, but it makes sense. There's a percentage. I can't remember what it is now. Let's say it's 20%.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
if you've got 20% less accidents on the road, I think everyone would be happy
Mm.
about that. Even any percentage
Yeah.
less is a good number.
And we might cover this later on, but since it's a comment now, but it sort of does impact insurance, doesn't it? So therefore, you would think there is data behind it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So in ADAS and insurance companies, particularly in terms of insurance backed work. So if you have a body shop, the insurance company is paying for the work to be done. And so they've got a big concern about the work being done correctly. And so there is a link between ADAS repairs and insurance companies. And the link, or what's linked the two together, is a company called Thatcham Research. And Thatcham Research have produced, they produced a couple of these sort of documents over the years, but most recently, I forget the date, they produced a document or two documents, and they were called the IIR, which is the Insurance Industry Regulations, I think it is. I shoot myself for not getting that right, but it sounds about right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's produced by Thatcham. It's the IIR, and there was two documents. There's one that's sort of a brief overview of what these things mean, and then one that's a guidance document. It's quite detailed, and really gives you the specifics about what these insurance industry regulations mean for your business, because part of it is things like documentation, a paper trail to say that this vehicle came in on this day and this was its condition. Then I worked on it. I did all the work that was applicable, and this was the condition of it afterwards. And when I'm saying condition, I mean the condition of the wheel alignment of the vehicle, and the condition or status of the ADAS sensors, which should have been, or perhaps in some instances should have been, calibrated. And it's about sort of accountability, responsibility, paper trails, and this is being driven by the insurance companies.
Right. Yes. Okay. So yes, it must be data driven. Therefore, I would imagine. So
absolutely, yeah.
So, from a workshop perspective, why is it important that technicians understand ADAS systems, even if they're not carrying out like specifically calibrations themselves?
Yeah.
And is it just technicians?
It's everyone really. So you'll need someone to do your calibrations. You will, but as technicians who work in a workshop, well, for example, you need qualifications for a reason. And the reason you need a qualification is to prove that you know stuff about cars that you should know. And the customer is going to come to you then because you are the qualified expert and relies on your knowledge and opinions to ensure their vehicle goes back on the road and operates as it's intended to and be safe. So what that means is then when a new technology comes out, you then have a responsibility to understand that technology and its impact on the work that you do. So whether you do the calibration itself or not, you still have a duty to understand it and understand the consequences of it. Because the one that always gets me is and I'm not saying this is something that might happen every day, but it could happen, and the fact it could happen is scary enough. So if you say, I spoke about that advanced emergency brake system earlier, could perform an emergency stop in an emergency scenario. So how does it do that? Well, it's detecting the vehicle ahead, and maybe the vehicle ahead has made an emergency stop, or maybe it's crashed, or whatever happens, but it's detected it. So if you didn't know about anything about ADAS, and you were, I don't know, took the front end off a vehicle, so sometimes, depending on the sort of configuration of an engine, you might whip the front end off a car to do like a timing belt or something like that, right? And then mounted to the front is a radar, and it might be this radar that's being used to detect this vehicle ahead. It might not be, it might be a camera, but let's say it's the radar on the front end of the vehicle. So you've popped the front end off to do this work. You've not intended to do any work with the ADAS system, and then you popped it back on. Now, when you put it back on, you just put it back on. You're not really thinking about it too much, but maybe because the bolt holes may have some movement on them that could allow some changes in the alignment of that front bumper, or maybe you just fitted incorrectly ever so slightly, and it just tilts it up an angle. Well, now that radar could be, let's say it's pointing upwards, and you're driving down the road, and instead, as you approach a bridge, it detects that bridge and thinks it's a car, and you're traveling at motorway speed, and you've got your family in the car, and suddenly it performs an emergency stop.
Right.
I mean, I don't think, I don't think I need to say any more, really. I think that just the fact that someone might not know that could happen. I think that's reason enough for everyone to get to know a little bit about this. So at least they know, right, well, if it does have something like that on it, we really need to make sure we've got a process in place to follow up on this, to make sure the correct work's done, and someone's paying attention to these things. And it doesn't have to be the technician. This could be front of house, so the staff that take the keys off the owner, and maybe a little questionnaire about your vehicle, or it could be that they put the vehicle details into a certain piece of software that then looks up, okay, does this vehicle have ADAS or not? Do we even need to be concerned about it? Because there are jobs that will affect ADAS, and you might not think that they will, but they could.
So you've mentioned like the front, so wheel alignment, suspension work, windscreen, because I think on my car it's on the top of the windscreen. That's is it the radar? It's
quite a popular area just behind your rear view mirror. You've got a nice little sort of free section of the windscreen to play with, and that's typically where you see cameras mounted. And and the instant I just spoke about, cameras, perhaps another one of the sensors that they could use to do that detection. And so you're right. So you mentioned windscreen repairs. That's kind of a really big one now. So windscreen repairs are really common, and so those staff really do need to be aware of. You can't just whiz the windscreen in and out as it was historically, and I think the same is true just for general repairs. I'm not saying that every single time you do a normal piece of work that you would need to do a calibration, and I'm not actually saying every time you do steering or suspension work you'd have to do a calibration, because I'm not the person who dictates that. It's the vehicle manufacturer who does. So what people need to do is see what the manufacturer says. But ultimately, I think it's fair to say that the cameras, the radars, they have an axis that they work off, and they have an axis they believe the vehicle is traveling along. And so changing steering, suspension, or the wheel alignment in any way will have an effect on that axis the vehicle travels along. And so if that reference is wrong, I can't say how the ADAS system will react. There's too many variables, but we can say it might be unpredictable. And I don't know about you, but if I'm driving a car, I don't really fancy unpredictable behavior from my driver assistance system. I'd quite like it to just behave itself and do what I expect.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine in Scotland, we get quite a lot of rain, especially in my part of Scotland. And
Yeah.
quite often I've got a camera stroke sensor on the front of the hood.
Yeah.
And quite often rain or leaves or something gets in front of that. And then I get messages in this dashboard telling me there's a problem with forward assistance.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, right. But then it makes, I know we're talking about technicians, but as a driver, then it makes me think, well, I'll just drive as safe as I normally drive anyway.
Yeah.
Because if the leaf comes over or the rain gets bad when I'm driving, I can't stop if I'm on the motorway or something. So, yeah, I can imagine from technician point of view. So, say if a car comes into a workshop, I suppose it depends if the workshop is a manufacturer, does multiple manufacturers. How would the awareness training fit in before a technician comes to work on the ADAS system itself?
Yeah, I mean, training varies everywhere. There's always large differences, and for example, if you were attending training to learn how to do calibration,
Yeah.
the focus of the course might be on how to do the calibration, i.e., how to use the equipment, how to set it up, the logic behind the setup, why you're doing these certain movements, and why you're placing it in this particular place, and why the targets look the way they do, and these kind of things. So the focus of calibration training, that sort of if you think of it as a secondary stage,
Right. Yeah.
The aim could be different. Whereas the aim with this course is the underpinning knowledge that I'd call it, that sits behind all of that. It's arguably that, you know, why you do the calibration, why it's important, why you wouldn't want to get it wrong, why you wouldn't want to place the target incorrectly. Maybe a bit more background around, okay, you're calibrating the camera and you know you are, and you know how to do it, but what features is that enabling? What does the camera do?
Yes.
And, you know, same with the radars, rear radars, all these kind of things. So it's a bit more of the background, really, which I always I know it's important. There's so many instances where me understanding something on a deeper level has helped me fix more cars, and perhaps work more mindfully. I think particularly in the sense of ADAS, is when you know the risks, perhaps, of what could go wrong, and how you could say have the incorrect environment for a calibration, and it calibrate, and you think it's calibrated, but actually it's a sort of a suboptimal calibration that's gone through. It's sort of ticked it in the box, but you've essentially just programmed it on sort of incorrect parameters. Yeah. And so again, I'm not saying I know the exact consequences, but it will be less than ideal. And there is some there's certainly some articles, some research that's been done on these kind of things, and I think it's pretty consistent that if things aren't done correctly, there is an effect on the ADAS systems.
So from a business point of view, we've talked about the insurance. So if I'm running an independent garage, either I'm the manager or the owner, and I suppose there's business insurance, and then there's the insurers who are paying for the repairs as well. So having an awareness of ADAS, is that going to reduce my risks in the workshop?
Oh, yeah, Absolutely. I think this is, you're onto a key point actually here. Is what one of the key things is your responsibility as a business. You have a duty of care to make sure the vehicle goes back on the road and it is in good working condition and operates as it was made to operate. And we talk about it quite a lot in the awareness course actually about this, so I won't go into it too much, but there is a legal responsibility for you to make sure that vehicle's correct. That's it. And I think awareness is definitely the place to start, to know where you are. And it's not, it doesn't mean that, okay, right, well, now I know about ADAS, I must go out and I must spend tens of thousands of pounds on ADAS equipment. That doesn't have to be the solution. It is a solution, but your solution might be, okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change our sort of working practices. We're going to accommodate this sort of ADAS sort of triage, if you like, when a vehicle comes in, to see if we're going to have to do anything with it, and we'll cost that up for the customer so that they know there's no unexpected hidden cost, that you're upfront with it, they know about it beforehand. And then it might be that you outsource the problem to someone else. So it's
a specialist.
To a specialist, because that tends to be what happens in the automotive industry when there is something that's perhaps not quite mainstream. You get these specialists pop up, and perhaps if the sort of size of the market increases, well, then people do start to take it on themselves, and you do see lots of garages taking it on. I was doing some work last week with a piece of ADAS calibration equipment. It's also does wheel alignment, and I thought, you know what, if you were looking for new wheel alignment equipment, I'd go for that, because it does my ADAS too. It's like a nice package. So sometimes it might be, it's an investment, but I think in the automotive industry, you never stop in investing in equipment, because everything changes over time, and there's always something new to buy. So I never like things where you introduce new problems and new costs to a business, but I'm not necessarily saying that is an immediate cost, but you've got to have an awareness, just because you can't let cars go out that might not be functioning correctly. I don't think that's
you've got
the right thing to do.
Legal requirements that exist now, never mind the new ones that are going to come in. So I mean, you might not be able to answer this, but just by your gut instinct, sort of what percentage of technicians, let's say in the UK, do you think need an awareness more than they have now?
I'd just say it's essential. Like I said to you before about the qualification side of it, is if you well, I mean, would you if your garage advertised, we've got come and bring your car to us, we've got no qualifications, and but we'll try our best. It's not a very attractive proposition, but and that's why garages have qualified trained technicians. So if you've got a new technology, I think it's important, well, it's essential that people just know about it. You've got to know about it. You work in that industry. You know, if a customer came in and said, "Can you replace my battery?" and you said, "What's a battery?" I think they'd be concerned. And you know, a modern customer might be concerned if they go in and they say, I last time we had the car at the main dealer and they said it needed a wheel alignment and an ADAS calibration after this, and you go, "Oh no, I've never heard about that." That kind of it doesn't, it might not sit well with a customer, and I just think awareness is all you need. You need awareness. You've got to at least acknowledge its existence and just understand the risks to your business, and what you need to implement to make sure you've covered yourself, really.
This is going off track a little bit, but I'll ask it. Is this ADAS? I mean, it's got the word systems in it. Is ADAS? Is it? Do you see it as like a step closer to more widely having driverless cars?
Yeah, absolutely.
It just came. I was thinking that as you were talking, I thought this seems like a step towards that.
Yeah, so it's it's a current trend. You can see it all over the world. My first instance of seeing it was a couple of my friends from my times in China. They sent me a message. I think it was 2 Christmases ago now, and they'd got together in I can't remember the city. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
They were all sat inside a driverless taxi driving down the road, and they sent me a video of them sat in there. There's no one in the driver's seat. It was really, really cool, and you know, it is massively convenient. It really is. And I think you see it now in America. There's instances of that. I think it's Waymo, one of them. And I think I saw something recently about Waymo in London. They might just have a web page. Waymo, by the way, is driverless taxis, autonomous vehicles. So yeah, it's a trend. It's going to be on an upward trajectory, and I think we'll just see more and more of it, to be honest. And it will be. I feel like it might be driven by regulations as much as anything else, because that's kind of what's happened. As I mentioned earlier, these mandatory systems, they've been mandated by the European Union. This is, you know, it's led by that. That's what the implementation is coming for. There are other drivers for sure. Things like NCAP, which is the sort of the safety testing of a vehicle before it gets sold. They drive quite a lot of this as well through their testing and award points for things that aren't necessarily mandated. So, you know, if you wanted to score highly, the manufacturers have then got a benefit to them bringing these systems into the vehicles before they're mandatory. So there's that element as well. But yeah, for sure, I think more autonomous driving will be coming, especially with, you know, AI being integrated into almost everything in the world. I can see that being driving this sort of change as well. And yeah. So for sure, I think we're going to see more autonomous driving.
So workshops, technicians can't afford to ignore this. It's a bit like me trying to ignore AI in what I do. If I tried to ignore it and technology, I wouldn't have a business. So it seems the same for technicians.
I think that's true to a point.
Yes.
Yeah, because so for you, for example, for you to ignore AI, or for anyone to ignore AI, that's kind of just a casual decision. The impact is could be negligible, could be non-existent, could have an effect. You know, maybe a competition get the jump on you, but this isn't about being competitive. It's not about that. It's about liability. You know, if you send a vehicle out that's not functioning as it should, I'm not saying you'll be found guilty in a court. I don't know. I'm not a legal expert, but I know you've got a legal responsibility to ensure that vehicle goes back on the road and is safe to drive. That's just a fact.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where your IMI Level 1 award in ADAS awareness is so important. So obviously technicians can do it, but who else did you say in the workshop or garage can do it?
The training?
Yes, the training.
Oh yeah, it's as I said, it was an interesting one for me because I'm normally writing technical training courses. That's what I specialize in, and this was non-technical, which I enjoy as well, because teaching is all about making things simple. And so it was written so that it wouldn't be overly complex, but still comprehensive. You can make things simple and still comprehensive and robust. So it's for everyone. So if you were, I mean, if it depends on the type of business that you work in, but you could, anyone from salesmen, customer facing staff, parts people, I mean, maybe even a valeter to a certain degree, because I guess you do sort of get into the intricacies of the bodywork, and you could damage something, especially if, say, I don't know, the car's not sort of complete. Someone had asked you to walk off behind the bumper for some reason. I don't know the scenarios, but that's what I mean is because you can't know all of the scenarios. There's too many. The best thing to do is, I'll tell you what, if everyone knows, we're all okay. And I think being part of the automotive world, anyone who's in automotive that wants to get a grasp of ADAS, it's the course for you. It's a great little insight. It'll save you a lot of time doing all the research, reading all those European regulations.
So tell us a bit then, just a quickly overview, like bullet points of the key topics, and at the end of the course, what would somebody know?
Yeah. So key topics, I would say. So we definitely look at a number of the features, and we look at the features, and then look at the sensors that they use. So I keep saying camera, and a camera is what we'd consider an optical sensor. So I keep saying a sensor, but and in the context of a camera, so you've got cameras, radars, there is LiDAR, and so we go through what those sensors are, how they work, the different types that you could get. Then look at how they are integrated into a system. So what that camera or what that radar might be used for. So I think you said earlier about lane keep assist or something like that, and just giving you a little bit of feedback maybe to get you back in lane. So looking at those sort of systems, and what I tried to do was sort of tell the story of those particular systems as well. The sort of how they've evolved, if you like, over time from this system into, say, the mandatory system that you see now, and like I said, the how we got there, the story behind it. So yeah, a lot about the systems, sensors, the actuators, you know. So hang on a second, because if it is controlling the steering, how's it doing that? What's in control of it? And just shining a light on it. Nothing too overly technical, but just to give an awareness. So that's one section. There's the IIR section, which is one of the really important points, particularly for people who are doing the insurance-led work, so body shops and things like that. But it is a framework that can be applied everywhere. And if something like that exists, I'd say it's pretty good practice to take note of it. You know, Thatch and Research are really well regarded in the industry. You know, they're leaders in what they do, and the insurance companies who've devised this with Thatcham, they know what they're talking about. They don't want to be liable for anything, so they've really you know, dotted the I's and crossed the T's on it. You can, it's pretty, it's a bit too too lengthy if you ask me, but there's a lot in there, and it's helpful because it gives you something, a platform to work from then. So there's a big section on that. We go through the documents word for word, checking it all out. Just one thing I don't like is complicated wording. I really like to simplify things, you know, use simple language rather than complicated language. So sometimes there's words or definitions in there, and you go, hang on a second, I could just make that much more easy to understand. So it's that's what we do. Go through that document, make it easy to understand, come up with some ideas around, okay, well, the IIR says you should do this. Well, what about doing something like this? That could be a solution. And And then there's other points in there with the IR where you'd read it and think, oh my God, that's going to be so much hassle for my business. But then you take a step back and say, well, actually, the tool manufacturers are aware of this too. And so what they've done is they've looked at IR, packaged their offering up in a way that meets that criteria. So again, it's about looking at the document, simplifying it, bringing it into the real world, and seeing what your actual problems are, rather than making it daunting and sound like an issue. Let's try and look at the problems. We go into this, why they're safe and how they're safe, and who is responsible for different parts of that sort of designed in safety from the point of design. So sort of the engineering teams they have at the vehicle manufacturers, they have a responsibility for certain things, and then okay, who's responsible for it in the workshop, which obviously, you know, that's the garages, the workshops. We also talk about the customer as well, because I know, and I'm sure if any technicians, people who worked in a workshop are watching, you know that you might get pushback when you say to someone, right, well, we've done this work, X, Y, and Z, or we will be doing this work. However, you need a ADAS calibration for this to be complete correctly. And unfortunately, that's, I don't know, just making up a number, £150 more.
Yeah.
And you get some pushback from the customer. And so how do you tackle that? Because it would technically leave your business as a vehicle not operating as it should be, as it's intended to. But it's because the customer has stopped you doing it. So there's that angle to cover, and we cover that off in the course too.
Oh, that's really useful. That sounds really useful.
Well, that's the stuff you need. There's it's the important bits that's what we're focused on. So yeah, I'd say those are the key bits. I'm probably doing myself a disservice and missed out.
No, you can't cover everything. But that's an indication. Why is it important that the course is IMI certified?
Yeah, so I think the IMI is well known. It's got some credibility attached to it that people feel is valuable. If you were to say that I've got an IMI certificated, I've been on an IMI certificated course, or attended it, or watched it in this case, then it's a little bit of credibility attached to it, rather than just a certificate. So you know, it doesn't change the content. The content is the content, but it's sort of a little bit of extra incentive. Gives it a little bit more weight, I suppose. That's what you'd say.
Yes. Do you know how long the course is? How long would it take somebody to go through?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I can't remember. I should know, and I would have known at some point in time, but I've forgotten, because it's not what I'm working on right now.
It sounds comprehensive anyway. So
yeah, it was a long one. I remember being in that studio for a long time filming it, so I think it's quite it's good. I know I was really happy with all the things we covered, and I thought that's really useful for someone. It's going to be a really useful course. It's of everything you need to know packaged in, and yeah, it's a nice little story to tell, going through all these sort of things.
So it also seems to me that it might be, because you mentioned it before, that, like, some garages, workshops could either, if there did need to be, after the awareness stage, more ADAS work done on a vehicle, they could outsource it or do it in-house. So this course seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but doing this course could be a way of deciding if the business invests in more training
Yeah.
and more equipment, or decides, no, I'm going to outsource that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's it's step one. And it's step one for everyone. It's step one for the technicians. It's step one for the management, front of house, because whether you do the calibration or not, you need to know about it. I'd almost say that, step one, wherever you do it, I just think you should be doing it somewhere, and you should get that knowledge. And obviously, I'd say, you'd want to do it with us. We're sort of, I think if anything, we're quite well known for sort of the detail and sort of comprehensive job we do in most things, and it is the same with this. Really, it's quite robust. And yeah, like I said, it's the perfect starting point to then move forward and say, right, okay, we've got this. We can't run away from it. It's it's there. It's been around for, to be honest, it's been around for a while. But I think it was July 2024 when these mandatory systems that I mentioned earlier, that came into play for all new vehicles being sold. So after that point, you don't have to think whether something does have ADAS. It absolutely will. It will have it. That's the end of it. And really, that's been the case for quite a while. I think probably you could perhaps say maybe up to 10 years old. I think that would be fair to say. You'd have things with ADAS still around that time, and so it's not really a new thing. It's better late than never to start now. But I think it's really important because so many of these vehicles have it. So
this level one awareness sounds absolutely perfect, because there are so many different types of sizes of businesses, sizes of garages, workshops. There are independent garages that might do all manufacturers, or there are brand specific. There are workshops that do maintenance for buses and coaches, fleet vehicles. I can see this being they need it now. Maybe I was reading something, and they were saying they were just almost making it up as they go along and trying to work it out themselves. But this seems like it's like a fast track to getting enough information to know what to do next.
Yeah.
I
think you've got to be kind to yourself. Give you the knowledge to start with, and and you get it from a reliable source. Know that a lot of research has been done to make sure what you listen to is correct and up to date as best as possible. And it is. It's as essential as like health and safety training, because it's someone else's health and safety that's impacted by it. So it's really important.
I knew a little bit from the website, but after speaking with you today, I understand a lot more on how important it is. More important than it might seem as a bit of a frustrated driver. There's much more to it. Maybe not frustrated. I mean, the car I had before this one was 15 years old, and then I jumped to a new car. So I can imagine garages being in a similar situation. Maybe they've been working on older cars without the technology, and then they've seen a glut of cars coming in, and they're going to need to do this awareness training. So thank you for educating me and everybody else. So if people want to know more about your specific course, how do they find out about it?
Yeah, so if they go on our website, it's at ourvirtualacademy.com. There's a number of tabs along the top there. I think one of them says online training, and if you hover over that tab, you'll then see one come up, which is the IMI ADAS awareness training. If you click on there, a couple of clicks will start the process of getting you enrolled, and it's pretty straightforward. I think sort of just once you're paid, you get your login credentials sent over, and off you go. Easy to do and quite accessible.
It sounds brilliant because they don't even have to leave the workshop to do it.
No, no. I mean, you can do it on your phone. You can sit
Yeah.
at home and do it whenever. I
Yeah.
mean, you might want to do it at work, but
Yeah.
that's up to that's not up to me.
Well, thanks very much, Pete.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Really helpful, and we'll speak to you again.
Great. Thank you.